everyone. My name is Andrea Bjornstead, and I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Counseling and Human Development at South Dakota State University. I am also the mental health specialist in SDCU Extension. I am the daughter of a farm machinery dealer, so I grew up surrounded by producers my whole life, and I've spent my time in SDCU Extension exploring and understanding the effects of stress on the mental health of agricultural producers. I am an invited speaker across South Dakota, and I have spoke to over probably 500 producers during the past year on the effects of stress. And I've also served on national teams that have helped train Farm Service Agency personnel, the American Farm Bureau Association personnel on how to work with distressed producers. So I'm very excited to share some information with you today, and I hope that you find it helpful. So I will be discussing the effects of stress on your body and how to identify your stress signs and symptoms and the effects on your body that has when it turns into chronic stress. So just an overview of my presentation. I'll first start off with farm stressors. Then we'll move into stress signs and symptoms I kind of discussed. Let's talk about how that manifests itself inside your body. How do you know when you're stressed? Understanding the impact of stress on your body, as well as understanding a little bit about mental health. And then we'll end with some stress management strategies. So most people experience stress, some type of stress every day. And we experience stress when we perceive a situation as dangerous, difficult, or painful, and we do not have the resources to cope. And stress is really our body's way of responding to any kind of demand or threat. So when we experience stress, we can have a fight or flight reaction, or it's also called a stress response. And this stress response is our body's way of protecting ourselves. So when working properly, it helps us stay focused, energetic, and alert. Um, a little bit of stress actually helps us be more productive in our lives and helps motivate us to complete tasks. So a small amount of stress is actually very useful for us. However, what's happening in agriculture right now is that over time, over the past couple of years with weather and market prices and all those sorts of things, now it's turned into chronic stress. And chronic stress can really impact our mental health as well as our physical health. So that fight or flight response, what happens is our nervous system responds by releasing hormones and cortisol and adrenaline, which makes our heart pound faster, our muscles tighten, blood pressure rise, our breath quickens, and all these sorts of things happen, and it speeds up our reaction time and enhances our focus, and it prepares you to either fight or flee. So again, with all those things happening in our body, when we have that going on constantly, it contributes to a decline in mental health as well as a decline in our physical health. So I want you to sit there and reflect a little bit on what are some examples of stressors that you're currently experiencing, and out of all those stressors, what is unique to agriculture? Because, agriculture is a very unique occupation with a specific stressor. So thinking about all those things, what currently is stressing you out? So when I speak in front of audiences, usually I have them talk about their specific stressors. And so I want you to draw a circle on a piece of paper and think about what's all on your plate. So I want you to write down all of your current stressors and worries and what you're currently experiencing. What thoughts do you have? What do you worry about? Those sorts of things. So take a little bit of time to write those in this circle. I provided some examples here as you're thinking. Just some examples of some common stressors could be relationships. Maybe, if you have a multi-generational farm family, you have grandparents that are working the farm, parents, children, all those different things can mix in and contribute to blurred boundaries. And who's responsible for which task? How do we pass down the family farm from one generation to the next? And currently right now with the lack of lack of social abilities that we have, given the current situation, relationships can be even more tense than usual. However, it can also contribute to more cohesiveness in families too. So it just kind of depends on what's occurring within your family system. So thinking about those multi-generational family farms, those relationships, how is your relationship with your significant other and your children? And right now, with children not being able to attend school, what is the impact of that within your family system? So, are you helping them with their schoolwork and trying to balance everything else out while you're homeschooling your kids? We know that market prices are continuously declining, and that is a huge stressor on producers as well as the weather. The weather's very unpredictable. There, for a while, they were talking about a very wet spring, and recently I just saw that there's some concern for drought in some areas across South Dakota. So weather is very unpredictable. You have your normal daily chores, and maybe concerns about your machinery right now, or maybe your machinery is working rather well. Uh, Physical health. We know that uh, producers have one of the highest mortality rates related to chronic illnesses or chronic illnesses, stress related illnesses. So, thinking about your physical health, maybe you have some worries about your physical health. Planting season right now, and finances. We know finances are a concern. So, maybe you have more on your plate than these. Maybe some of these aren't on your plate, and that's okay. Everybody's plates look differently. Some people's are much heavier than others. So thinking about what's on your plate, what are those stressors? What's all wearing you down right now? What's unique about agriculture is there are these interconnections between your personal life and your professional life because it's all intermixed. So there's an overlap between the individual, the family, and business spheres, which leads to deeper interreliance between the three spheres. And so I presented to Annie's project where females in the family discuss how the farm is never separated from within the relationship, or the farm is never separated from the family aspect. So thinking about that, how are all those tied together? And there's such a uniqueness where the three of them are really, really connected. So we've talked a little bit about what's on your plate, but what does that stress feel like to you? And how do you know when you're experiencing stress? And everybody's stress signs are different. So thinking about, okay, when I'm stressed, where do I feel it in my body first? And I hear common responses such as, oh, I get a headache. I get a really strong headache. Maybe it's a migraine. Or I feel it in my shoulders. I feel like I'm carrying this really heavy backpack. Or I have butterflies in my stomach all the time. Or I feel sick to my stomach. Everybody's is different. Where do you feel your stress? So, for example, I feel my stress in my back. If I sit for long periods of time and work at the computer, I really feel it in my back. I also can get really tightness in my stomach too. That tells me that I'm super stressed. I also can get very irritable. So I can go from 0 to 100 really fast. So thinking about what are your signs of stress? How do you know when you're stressed? How do others know when you're stressed? Because their perceptions might be very different than your own. So I do want to go over some signs of stress. And as I'm going through these, I want you to think about which ones apply to you. So, some cognitive symptoms might include memory problems. I know that when I'm really stressed, I'm constantly asking Siri on my phone to remind me to attend meetings because I'm scared I'm going to forget a meeting. And I forgot one last night. I forgot one of my daughter's class sessions, class meetings last night at 7 p.m. And that's going to happen, right? Especially when you're experiencing a lot of stress. So memory problems, maybe an inability to concentrate. I have a hard time focusing. I've heard that from producers. I have a hard time focusing when I'm really stressed. Making poor decisions, jumping to decisions rather quickly rather than actually thinking through the whole process. Seeing only the negative. When we're stressed and we're worried, sometimes we have these thought these cycles of thoughts that turn very negative, and it's hard to snap out of it, especially when we're experiencing so much stress. We can have these thoughts of, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, or um, I don't know how I'm going to complete everything that I need to do today. So seeing only the negative. Some people have anxious or racing thoughts. I had a producer one year tell me that he was so tired because he wasn't sleeping at night because he had all these anxious or racing thoughts. And he actually ran his tractor through a fence and fell asleep and ran his tractor through a fence. So anxious or racing thoughts can keep us up at night and constant worrying. Usually when I ask a room of producers how many of them are worriers, I would say at least 75% raise their hands. So if you are a constant worrier, you are not alone. Other signs of stress can be physical. So, aches and pains. I discussed how sometimes we can get headaches, sometimes we can feel it in our shoulders. We can have changes in digestion, nausea or dizziness. Some people get chest pain. I had a friend that when he get really stressed, he'd have chest pain and a rapid heartbeat. And sometimes it felt like he was having a heart attack. So, all those things, those are some anxious symptoms too, some anxiety symptoms. So, those are all physical signs and frequent colds. If you can't shake a cold, sometimes it's a sign of chronic stress. Emotional symptoms. I kind of talked a little bit earlier about my own irritability, how I can go to 0 to 10 fast. So, moodiness, irritability or short temper, agitation. Sometimes it's just hard to relax. You sit down in a chair at the end of the day, and can you allow your body to unwind? Or when you're laying in bed, can you let all those feelings disappear and can you allow your body to relax? Feeling overwhelmed, a sense of loneliness and isolation. And this is a really big red flag related to depression. And so, if you have a producer, if you know of a friend, family member, neighbor who really isolate, or they used to be very social and then they isolate themselves, that's a sign of concern. And I know it's really hard right now with the social distancing that's happening to really get a sense as to who's isolating themselves or who's experiencing loneliness. So that's where I really encourage you to check in with your neighbors, check in with your family, your friends, and and kind of gauge how they are doing with their stress. And then the last one's a general sense of unhappiness. Behavioral symptoms. Some people eat more or they eat less. It's kind of the ends of a continuum. Um, I know that when I'm stressed, I tend to eat less. But there are some people who are stress eaters, and so they tend to eat more. It can also be the same for sleep. Some people lay awake at night and their thoughts and worries consume them. And at other times, if you're experiencing lots of unhappiness and isolation and loneliness, you can actually sleep too much. I already talked about that social isolation. It's a red flag and it's very concerning. Procrastinating or neglecting responsibilities. Some people turn to alcohol, cigarettes, or drugs to relax. I know that there's a concern of opioid use across the United States. And then any nervous habits, nail biting, pacing, those sorts of things can also be signs of stress. So, thinking about all those things, which ones applied to you? Which one stood out to you? If you were to ask other family members which ones apply to you, do you think they'd be different? So, those are all valid questions to think about in order to really get a sense as to what your stress signs and symptoms are. Here are some signs of chronic prolonged stress. So, there can be changes in routine, care of livestock might decline, increase in illness. I kind of talked about the chronic stress and how that can contribute to frequent colds. And later on, I do have a TED talk that will show the impact of it on your body. Increase in farm accidents, appearance of farmstead declines. And then the last one, children show signs of stress. So I kind of talked about how I go to 0 to 10, 0 to 100, 0 to 10, whatever scale you want to use, really fast. And so if I come home from work and I'm really stressed and I'm irritable and my kids experience that, what might be their reaction? Well, they might go to 0 to 100 with me, right? They might become irritable and join me in that stress. Or they might withdraw. They might say, "Oh, mom's in a mood. I'm going to go to my room." So you can kind of have multiple responses. But even our little ones, our babies and our toddlers can feel our stress. Um, so keep that in mind that our stress does impact our children as well. I do want to take a little time to differentiate between mental health and mental illness because the two terms are used interchangeably, but they're very different. So when you hear stuff in the media about, hey, let's talk about mental health, a lot of times people think about mental illness, but mental health is really our overall state of well being. We should all be striving for optimal mental health, that positive mental health. It's where we realize our own abilities and we can contribute to our community. We can work at a productive pace. We can cope with the normal stress of daily life. So we should all strive for that positive mental health. But sometimes when we, for example, experience chronic stress, and like I said, in agriculture right now, it's kind of turned into chronic stress, we can experience a mental illness. So mental illness is a medically diagnosable illness. Now, does that mean that everyone with mental illness is diagnosed? No. There are lots of people who suffer from depression or anxiety or substance use disorders without being diagnosed. It should contribute to a significant impairment in multiple areas of your life. Maybe it's cognitive, maybe it's with your emotions or within your relationships. And it's a result of various factors. So the research has shown that, if you go back to the nature versus nurture debate, that's a little bit of both, that it can be biological, developmental, and psychosocial. So the environment can contribute to the development of mental illness, but we also have a predisposition to it. But there's hope because it can be managed through multiple treatment modalities. So lots of times when I give these presentations, I'll ask, what are some examples of mental illnesses? And it can be major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, substance use disorders. There are personality disorders, lots of different disorders. And I'm not going to cover those today. So if you want more information on that, you can certainly contact me. But I just want to differentiate between mental health and mental illness. So the goal really is when we're stressed out, we recognize the stress, we manage the stress before it turns into something more serious, such as a mental illness, such as depression or anxiety. So some symptoms of depression. I won't go through this entire list, but I do want you to take a minute and look it over. So as you're looking it over, how many of them are stress signs I've already discussed? So I've already talked about sleep. I've already talked about inability to focus and relax, our eating habits, our general unhappiness, decision making can be impacted. All these sorts of things. Most of them are stress signs. So the big question is how do you know when you're stressed and how do you know when you're experiencing depression? And depression is when you cannot shake these feelings. It has to impact multiple areas of your life, but you can't shake the feelings. So they're persistent, they're pervasive, and they last for more than 2 weeks. So there's a gray area. There's this gray line that exists between stress and depression. And, sometimes it's we can have different feelings at different points in our life. So just because I'm sad, does that mean I'm depressed? No. If I have some worries, does that mean I have anxiety? No. So keep in mind that there's a level of persistence and pervasiveness with mental illness. And also, it must impair multiple areas of your life. So I'm going to show you a quick TED talk on the impact of um, stress on your body.
Cramming for a test, trying to get more done than you have time to do. Stress is a feeling we all experience when we are challenged or overwhelmed. But more than just an emotion, stress is a hardwired physical response that travels throughout your entire body. In the short term, stress can be advantageous, but when activated too often or too long, your primitive fight or flight stress response not only changes your brain, but also damages many of the other organs and cells throughout your body. Your adrenal gland releases the stress hormones cortisol, epinephrine, also known as adrenaline, and norepinephrine. As these hormones travel through your bloodstream, they easily reach your blood vessels and heart. Adrenaline causes your heart to beat faster and raises your blood pressure, over time causing hypertension. Cortisol can also cause the endothelium, or inner lining of blood vessels, to not function normally. Scientists now know that this is an early step in triggering the process of atherosclerosis, or cholesterol plaque buildup in your arteries. Together, these changes increase your chances of a heart attack or stroke. When your brain senses stress, it activates your autonomic nervous system. Through this network of nerve connections, your big brain communicates stress to your enteric or intestinal nervous system. Besides causing butterflies in your stomach, this brain gut connection can disturb the natural rhythmic contractions that move food through your gut, leading to irritable bowel syndrome, and can increase your gut's sensitivity to acid, making you more likely to feel heartburn. Via the gut's nervous system, stress can also change the composition and function of your gut bacteria, which may affect your digestive and overall health. Speaking of digestion, does chronic stress affect your waistline? Well, yes. Cortisol can increase your appetite. It tells your body to replenish your energy stores with energy dense foods and carbs, causing you to crave comfort foods. High levels of cortisol can also cause you to put on those extra calories as visceral or deep belly fat. This type of fat doesn't just make it harder to button your pants. It is an organ that actively releases hormones and immune system chemicals called cytokines that can increase your risk of developing chronic diseases, such as heart disease and insulin resistance. Meanwhile, stress hormones affect immune cells in a variety of ways. Initially, they help prepare to fight invaders and heal after injury, but chronic stress can dampen the function of some immune cells, make you more susceptible to infections, and slow the rate you heal. Want to live a long life? You may have to curb your chronic stress. That's because it has even been associated with shortened telomeres, the shoelace tip ends of chromosomes that measure a cell's age. Telomeres cap chromosomes to allow DNA to get copied every time a cell divides without damaging the cell's genetic code, and they shorten with each cell division. When telomeres become too short, a cell can no longer divide, and it dies. As if all that weren't enough, chronic stress has even more ways it can sabotage your health, including acne, hair loss, sexual dysfunction, headaches, muscle tension, difficulty concentrating, fatigue, and irritability. So, what does all this mean for you? Your life will always be filled with stressful situations, but what matters to your brain and entire body is how you respond to that stress. If you can view those situations as challenges you can control and master, rather than as threats that are insurmountable, you will perform better in the short run and stay healthy in the long run.
Are vegans healthy? Are vegetarians healthy? French fries and beer are vegan, so you tell me. But
Sorry about that. The video just kept continuing. Um, so hearing about all those impacts of stress on your body, uh, we can clearly see that our physical health can decline during chronic periods of stress as well. So continuing on, so we experience stress. We have all these stressors. We talked about what's on our plate. We can recognize our stress signs and symptoms. Hopefully, you went through that list. You're able to circle which ones applied to you or jot down which ones applied to you. But now it's to the point where, okay, we have this stress, we have these stressors. How do we manage our stress before it becomes something serious, such as depression or anxiety? So I want you to think about on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 meaning you have extremely low stress, 10 meaning you have extremely high stress. How would you currently rate your stress? So put a number to it. What on a scale of 1 to 10, what would be your number for how you rate your stress? So for example, maybe you rated your stress at a 7. So the next question is, what would moving down one number look like for you? So moving from a 7 just to a 6, what would need to change? So what would need to change in your life for it to move from a 7 to a 6? And thinking about what is in your control. Because there's a difference. We have stressors, right, that are outside of our control, and we have those that are external to us, and then we have stressors that are inside our control. So moving from a 7 to a 6, what needs to change that I can control? So what's on your plate? Going back to what's on your plate, I want you to think about the stressors and can you control them? So whatever you wrote down, circle the ones that you can't control. So for example, going back to our original list, can we control relationships? Well, to some extent, we can control how we respond to other people, right? We can control our responses. Can we control weather? No, we can't control the weather. We can't control market prices. Can we control? I mean, another one might be healthcare costs. We can't control healthcare costs, but we can control maybe some our chores, to some extent, the planting that we do. We can control and help out with our kids' schoolwork, maybe some time management. We can control our finances to some extent, right? So circle the ones that are in your control. Which of your stressors are unproductive and only contribute to more stress? So those are the ones that are more outside your control. So those might be the ones we lay awake at night worrying about. So thinking about this pandemic, I know that when everything first started out, I'd lay awake at night and I'd read all this stuff online and I'd lie awake and think about what was happening. And then that would only contribute to more anxiety symptoms in me and contribute to less sleep. Well, can I control anything besides my own social distancing at this point? No. So it was an unproductive stressor, unproductive, that only contributed to more stress in me. So thinking about the weather, we can't control it. If we sit there and worry about it, it turns it into an unproductive stressor. So which ones can you control and which ones can't you control? So I kind of went through this as far as which ones we're able to control versus which ones we're not. So thinking about those things, how do we move from a 7 to a 6? By managing our stress, by managing those stressors that we can control. So I provided you some examples here of some healthy stress management. And I'll ask producers, what do you do to manage your stress? And I get multiple responses such as I talk to my family, or I hop in my truck and go for a drive and listen to music. Or maybe you're spiritual and you pray about your stress. So I get lots of different responses. And some people will say, I'll go and drink up at the bar. I'll drink and socialize at the bar. So, there's that social aspect to going out, but there's also to the point where, okay, are we drinking? Are we drinking too much? Or are we drinking an okay amount where it's not impacting our physical and mental health? So, healthy stress management, deep breathing. So, slow, deep breathing can help you relax. You might take a long, slow breath in through your nose and hold your breath for 3 seconds. Sometimes I'll do longer, so I might do 7 seconds. and exhale very slowly through your mouth for 4 seconds. This may help you fall asleep or get back to sleep if you wake in the middle of the night. I'll also do this when I'm out for a walk. I'll do some deep breathing where I'll breathe in through my nose for 7 seconds and then I'll breathe out my mouth for 7 seconds. And it really, really just slows down your heart rate. Exercising regularly. This is a big one for me. I work really hard at trying to exercise every day. It really helps me manage my stress. It helps me manage my weight. It helps me manage my eating, my nutrition as well. So, finding time to exercise daily is an excellent step towards reclaiming your sleeping habits, even too, and your nutrition and multiple areas of your life. So finding that time to exercise, maybe it's just a 30-minute walk for a break. Those are important too. Getting out of your tractor every once in a while and doing some stretching, helping your body become more flexible. Eating healthy, during this time, um, it can be challenging to eat healthy. So making sure you're putting nutritious foods in your body. Effective time management. I think we can, if you haven't struggled with time management, you should give me some tips because, I think everybody at some point struggles with time management. So maybe it's meeting with your family in the morning and planning out your day. What are we going to accomplish on our family farm today? Who's doing what tasks? Helping to become more efficient. Engaging in hobbies or interests. And this is a tricky one when I talk to producers because a lot of times they'll say, well, my hobby is my farm. Well, when your hobby is your farm that you love so dearly but also contributes to stress, you just have to make sure your hobby isn't contributing to your stress. So maybe for a while finding a hobby outside of your farm. Obtaining enough sleep. I kind of talked about that: exercising, eating healthy, daily breathing, unplugging from your social media as well, the TV. Sticking to a routine when you're sleeping is important. Going to sleep the same night, same time every night, and getting up each morning will go a long way as well. Include time in your routine to wind down and get ready for bed. So lowering the lights, trying some relaxation techniques, maybe some stretching, those sorts of things. But trying to stick to a routine is very important when you're obtaining enough sleep. Avoiding alcohol or drugs. So if you do engage in alcohol, making sure it's an amount that isn't excessive. Laughing is important. So lots of times I'll be like, when's the last time you had a really, really deep belly laugh? Okay, thinking about that laughter, keeping a positive attitude. It's very hard when we're stressed, when we have those negative thoughts that seem to cycle in our head. It's hard to keep a positive attitude, but that can, even just turning a negative thought into a positive thought can make a huge difference. Spending time with the people that you love, making sure that you have adequate time with your social support system, whether it's your family, your friends, and right now connecting with them by technology or phone calls. All of those things are important. Social distancing outside, seeking out that social support. Schedule a physical with your doctor. And I know that's really hard right now, but in the future, I had a director at a hospital once ask me, well, how can we get farmers to come in for their physicals? Because that's just real challenging. And so making sure you make your physical health a priority too. And then talking with a counselor. If you feel like your stress has turned chronic and it's so overwhelming that it's consuming you, maybe you're thinking, oh, I do seem to have signs of depression or anxiety, and maybe I should talk to someone. Talk with a counselor, talk with someone that, whether it's a pastor, uh, talking with your family. Just make sure you're talking. So trying to find a counselor is kind of like shopping for shoes. Okay. We try on shoes that sometimes fit, sometimes they don't. Uh, but just because we don't find a pair of shoes right away that fit, does that mean we stop looking for shoes? Hopefully not. Hopefully, if you don't find the first counselor you meet with to really understand you, or there can be some personality differences. Don't stop looking. I am a licensed professional counselor. I joke around with producers that I like to think I can make relation or have some type of relationship with everybody, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it is a personality difference. So making sure that you don't stop looking if you really feel like you should talk to a counselor. Physical activity is so important. Make it a daily routine. Prioritize it as an essential part of your day and put it on your calendar. I know I schedule mine in. Start doing a yoga routine or take a walk first thing in the morning to greet the day before anyone else realizes that you're even awake. I'm more of a night owl, so I would take more of a walk at night. If you have children, get in some activity before or after dinner. Move outdoors or indoors. Outdoor activities such as walking, biking, hiking, and jogging lets you get fresh air. If you need company, phone a friend during this time while you're on a walk. There are also free online videos for yoga, Pilates, strength training. You know what? If you haven't tried any of those things, now is a great time to give it a try. Yeah. Um, Reduce sitting time. Trade 30 minutes of watching TV or social media for 30 minutes of physical activity. Jog in place, do sit-ups while watching the news or your favorite TV shows. A friend of mine the other day and I every 30 minutes, and he was at work and I was here working. Every 30 minutes we would do 10 push-ups, or we would do 10 squats, or we would do um, 10 plank holds. So get up and moving. And then find support, find a workout buddy to keep each other accountable. As far as our physical health is very interrelated with our mental health. So take breaks right now from the news, including social media, taking care of your body with healthy meals, exercise, and deep breathing. I've already mentioned all of these. You see how they're very interconnected. Making sure you're talking, talk. Don't keep all these worries and stress inside, because what happens is it just keeps overloading. So it builds up and builds up and builds up and it has nowhere to go. So what does it impact? Well, it impacts your mental health, and then it impacts your physical health. So don't keep it all inside, and then let the light in. I know it's getting nicer outside, so making sure we get outside, breathing that fresh air, it can really make a big difference. So, with all of this, we know our stress signs and symptoms. We know our stress signs and symptoms, how it impacts our body, how it makes us feel. We need to manage our stress. So, I want you to start off small and look at the list of items that you can control. Set one self-care goal this week. For an example, it might be I will go for a walk outside for 30 minutes a day. Another example, I will spend 30 minutes in the morning talking with my family and making a plan for my day. I want you to make it specific and measurable. So if you say I'll go for a walk every day, well, that's not really measurable. I mean, it becomes more measurable when you put in the 30, well, probably more specific when you put in those 30 minutes a day. So just making sure that it's specific and measurable. Here are some farm stress resources. The Helpline Center, they have that phone number right there to call, or you can text SD Farm, and they'll have somebody that's available to respond. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, you guys can go ahead and take a look, and they also have a website. Otherwise, South Dakota is very fortunate to have the Vera Farm Ranch Stress Hotline. So it's free, confidential, and available 24/7. And so somebody will answer and will respond. And it's specifically for farm stress. So I encourage you, if you're experiencing stress that is just overwhelming, and today something resonates with you that, hey, I'm struggling and I need somebody to talk to, I encourage you to call that hotline. Other resources, there are some free mindfulness apps. If you don't know about mindfulness, it's all about grounding yourself with your mind and body, connection. And so these are great things that you can play while you're in your tractor or combine. And these are all free mindfulness apps. I've included the website as well. There are also places that you can receive online therapy. And these all, I did look them all up. They all have licensed professional counselors or psychologists. And so if your health insurance is covering telemental health right now, these might be some options. And some of them have sliding fee scales as well. Other resources, SDSU Extension. If you visit our website, we have resources for COVID 19. We have resources for flood, farm stress, and any of our workshops as well. So we do offer a workshop entitled Weathering the Storm, and it's really a lot. Some of this is in there, but it also provides some activities on other ways to manage stress. So if you're interested in those, please contact me. My contact information is listed here. If you know of a family member, friend, or a neighbor who is really struggling and you don't know what to do, I will help you find referral information, help you find resources. Don't hesitate to talk to them and reach out during this time. Reaching out to someone can go a long way, and we really need to feel a sense of social connection, a sense of belonging, a sense that people care about us during this time. So please do not hesitate to reach out to anyone, your family member, friend, neighbor, loved ones. Keep an eye on yourself. You know, if somebody's saying, "Hey, I noticed that you've changed recently," thinking about how all of that has impacted you so far is important too. None of us are immune to stress right now. However, in agriculture, with the market prices and the weather and some of the closures of different places, and small businesses and demand, supply and demand, those sorts of things, stress is very high. So please reach out to me with any questions or concerns. And I thank you for your time today.